we're going to get into our last story of the night about this Israeli attack on a hospital. It just gets worse and worse over there. Let me fix my hair, though. Here we go. I think I'm getting a haircut this week. It's getting a little shaggy here. But we're going to move on to our last story of the night. Get a load of this. This just happened today. Israel murdered 4 Western journalists in the city of Khan Yunis in Gaza. And the story's just brutal. It just gets worse and worse. So Israel, as I said at the top of the show, they have killed so far roughly 200 plus journalists since the war in Gaza began, and they do so intentionally. They killed 4 journalists that are subcontractors with Western media outlets like Reuters and Associated Press and others. And the story gets worse than that. They killed 4 journalists. Why? Because the journalists are covering the famine and the genocide in Gaza. Where? They killed them at a hospital where people are being treated for their injuries. What happened? Israel bombed the hospital twice. Once to hit their targets, and then a second time to get anybody they didn't kill and anybody that came in as first responders. This is the evil of the government of Israel. And this is the story from the New York Times, or pardon, this is from antiwar.com. It says, quote, the Israeli military on Monday massacred 20 Palestinians, including 5 journalists, in an attack on Gaza's Nasser Hospital that involved a double-tap strike on rescue workers in the southern city of Khan Yunis. According to the Associated Press, the initial strike at 10:10 a.m. Gaza time hit the 4th floor of the hospital, which has surgical operating rooms and doctors' residences, killing at least 2 people. Then, once rescue workers and journalists arrived at the scene, a second strike hit, killing 18 more people. A double-tap attack that was caught on video. The Israeli outlet 972 magazine published an investigation last month that said that the IDF had adopted using double-tap strikes as the standard procedure in Gaza. According to Reuters, the initial strike killed one of its contractors, cameraman Hussam al-Masri. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported that the Israeli military said the initial strike targeted a camera, which they claimed was a Hamas camera that was being used to observe IDF forces. They say that an Israeli tank shell struck the area, then another one was fired to make sure the camera was destroyed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu later claimed that the double-tap strike was a tragic mishap. But Israel's Channel 14 reported Israeli soldiers said the attack was approved and coordinated with senior command. The other 4 journalists killed by the Israeli attack on the hospital were Mariam Abu Daga, who freelanced for the Associated Press, Mohammed Salama, who worked for Middle East Eye and Al Jazeera, Moaz Abu Taha, a freelance journalist working for several news outlets, and Ahmed Abu Aziz, another freelancer contributing to Middle East Eye. Daga recently co-authored a report for the Associated Press that highlighted the plight of malnourished children in Gaza who are being starved by the Israeli blockade. Middle East Eye said that its head of video production recently spoke with Salama about Israel's starvation policy and that he expressed fear of being targeted by the IDF in the wake of the assassination of another Al Jazeera reporter, Anas al-Sharif. The Israeli military has killed a huge number of journalists throughout its genocidal war on the Gaza Strip. According to the Palestinian Journalist Syndicate, the attack on the Nasser Hospital brought the total number of journalists killed by Israeli attacks to more than 244. So, the reason they do the attack is because they're committing a genocide. Israel is in Gaza long after they should have left, murdering women and children, starving them to death, destroying hospitals and schools and infrastructure. It is only thanks to Western journalists that we know any of this, because the Israeli press is under military censorship. They're covering it up. Outside journalists are not allowed inside Israel. The Israeli press is under military censorship, and so what they can report is restricted. The only way that we know about what is even happening there is because of these outside journalists, international or Western journalists that are inside the Strip. Israel is systematically killing them because they do not want the world to know what is happening. They do not want the world to know that they are starving 2 million people to death. They do not want the world to know that out of all the casualties in the past few weeks, 70% of them are women and children. They don't want the world to know what they're doing. That's the world's most moral army, by the way. That's what they claim to be. The world's most moral army, as long as no one's looking, as long as no one's paying attention and there's no outside journalists there to cover it. So they're engaged in a systematic murder of journalists because they're engaged in a systematic ethnic cleansing and starvation of 2 million innocent people. In this strike, they targeted a camera at a hospital. So they killed some of the people being treated at the hospital, doctors, civilians, sick people. A tank shot the hospital to cover up their crimes. And then once journalists arrived to cover the strike, they hit the hospital again. And this is a deliberate policy called a double tap. And they know that this is how it works. They'll launch an attack, and then they know that first responders arrive, journalists arrive, humanitarian personnel, then they hit it again to kill everybody that's there to cover it. So they commit an atrocity, a journalist shows up to take a picture, then they do a second strike on the same exact target to kill the journalists. Double tap, that's what they call it. This is what they do. Where's the condemnation from all the Christians? Where's Charlie Kirk on this? Charlie Kirk cannot call himself a Christian anymore. Sorry, you forfeited that. I do not want to hear, and you cannot allow Charlie Kirk to go to one more public event, one more question and answer, one more ask me anything, without being protested, without being shouted down, without being interrogated about this. This guy goes around from campus to campus in the most artificial and phony and fake way, talking about, oh, God made me very blessed that I control $500 million. Oh, I'm so blessed. I'm so rich and I'm so blessed. And oh, God's been so good to me. I'm such a Christian. Oh, the Lord gave me the Sabbath. I take Saturday off. You sit there and call yourself a Christian and then you make excuses for the genocide of 2 million people? Seriously? You stand there and purport to be an evangelist like Billy Graham? Oh, you're the latest Billy Graham? You're our generation's America's pastor? Why? Because you said the right words? Because you said, God bless, God bless, God bless, my friend. Oh, I rebuke the devil in the name of Jesus. And then you go around from campus to campus making excuses for a famine? You have a rabbi from Israel on your show to explain how Israel's not inflicting a famine on these people. That's fake news. That's not a genocide. Israel could kill them all if they wanted to. Seriously? It's disgusting. This is what our country is supporting. And by the way, if any other country was doing this, there would be sanctions. There would be international outcry. We would summon the ambassador from that country. These are subcontractors for Western publications. These are journalists that work for Reuters and the Associated Press being murdered by Israel. Western journalists who are protected under international law, working for, in some cases, American companies, being murdered by Israel in a conflict zone intentionally to cover up their war crimes.
Very quickly, just want to chime in. I'm taking a couple notes. This is exactly why Charlie Kirk will never talk to Nick Fuentes. This is why perhaps a lot of conservatives will not talk to Nick Fuentes. He's willing to call out the things that their financial attachments will not allow them to call out. Charlie Kirk running around here, just like Nick Fuentes said, acting like he's a godly being. And what is he doing? He's violating the commandments. He's violating the commandments, right? Using the Lord's name in vain. He's using the Lord's name in vain to justify what Israel's doing, to try to get you all to be okay with what Israel's doing. And in all actuality, it's a genocide. He's not willing to call out certain things. He's just going along to get along and to make sure that whatever he does, he doesn't rock the boat too much to the point where he either loses some type of financial success that he has, or he's worried about maybe losing some type of other influence. I don't know. But you can tell with a guy like Charlie Kirk, he's so direct in his communication when it comes to any other issue. He'll challenge anybody else on any other topic. He'll be very logical when it comes to everything else. But when it comes to this, and he's violating a few more commandments too, because it seems like he's making other people as idols. Seems like he's praising other groups as gods. I don't know what type of God he's praising if he's condoning what's going on between Israel and Palestine. Nick Fuentes is willing to call it out and not have the burden that all of these other attachments that these other people have place on them. You see how he just calls it out. It's a genocide. These people say the word, their mouths start to mumble the word, and it's almost like a dark cloud's coming over them to where they feel like somebody's about to just snatch them out of the universe. This is why he's beloved. I don't think there's a reasonable person that looks at what Netanyahu's doing, looks at how Netanyahu's been finessing this entire war and believes a word that he's saying. When they talk about doing that double tap, can you just imagine that Charlie Kirk's not coming out talking about this double tap, that all these conservatives that act like they praise the Lord Jesus and all this other stuff, they're not coming out talking about these double taps. I just looked it up on my on ChatGPT. Let me read exactly again what a double tap is. And even ChatGPT said that Israel did it on August 25th, 2025 with Nasser Hospital, exactly what Nick Fuentes is talking about. Very quickly. A double tap strike is a military tactic involving two sequential attacks. The first strike targets an initial objective, which could be a person, a building, or another site. The second strike occurs minutes later when rescuers, medical personnel, journalists, or nearby civilians have arrived, intending to cause further casualties among those who respond. This is not the first time that Netanyahu has come out and said, oops, my bad. Matter of fact, the last time he did it, wasn't it with the church? Did Charlie come out and condemn him for that? These people are scared. Nick Fuentes is clearly not. This is why they want to convince people like me. They'll use the whole race baiting. He's racist, all this other stuff to get me to dislike him, to not even process the information that he's saying, right? They don't even want me to even look at him, because when you look at him, then what's the common sense is going to kick in, where it's just like, yo, dude starting, like, I don't understand. Like, dude seems to make sense to me. He's willing to call out the things that it seems like everybody else should be calling out, and everybody else is comfortable calling out just when it's not about Israel or the Jewish population, it seems like. So let's get back to the video. I already talked too long.
Where's America on this? Where's Trump on this one? Where's the Christians on this one? I don't know how anyone can continue to defend this in any way. They say Israel's not the enemy. What would a country have to do to be the enemy exactly? What would make a country the enemy? What made Saddam Hussein the enemy? What makes China or Russia the enemy? Has Vladimir Putin done anything like this? What makes Putin the enemy? What makes China the enemy? What makes them the enemy that does not make Israel also our adversary and actually a friend that we should continue to support? So it just doesn't get any worse than this. It's just a one layer on top of the next. They're carrying out a famine and a genocide. They're engaged in a cover-up of it. They're killing journalists to cover it up. And how do they kill journalists? They blow up a hospital first to lure journalists in, then murder them in a second strike. And then they lie about it. And then they tell us, well, that's just a tragic mishap. I would ask another question. I've seen Mark Maron making the rounds. Have you seen this? Mark Maron, a Jewish left-wing comedian. This guy's been making the rounds. He's an anti-Trumper, super progressive, super leftist. He's been making the rounds on all the shows, doing his comedy special, and he's been shaming the podcasters because the podcasters and the right-wing bros have brought a government to power that is fascist and anti-trans and the rest of it. Has Mark Maron said one thing about what's happening in Gaza? Has he said one thing about what Israel's doing? What was really interesting, I saw Mark Maron did a comedy special on HBO, and he said that Theo Von is so bad he would have Adolf Hitler on his program. Gee, that's interesting because I recall something similar where the Nelk brothers had Bibi Netanyahu on the show. Why don't we mention that one? We have a modern day genocidal maniac. We have a modern day fascist tyrant that the whole world cannot stop from creating living space for his people. His name is Benjamin Netanyahu. He went on a comedy podcast. They asked him about Whoppers and Big Macs. Mark Maron ever speak up about that? Does Mark Maron, the bleeding heart leftist, his heart bleeds for his transgender brothers and sisters. Has Mark Maron said one thing about Gaza? No? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? He feels so sorry for all the victims of Trump's administration and Trump's fascism. Nothing to say about the genocide in Gaza? Might that have something to do with the fact that he's a Jewish comedian? So, hey, pal, you can pack up that whole fake bleeding heart shtick. You can shove that right up your fucking Jewish ass. He's literally making the rounds, going from show to show. Okay, Joe Rogan won. Transgender people don't feel safe. Oh, why? Because they're going to get misgendered? Why is that? Because they're not going to be able to play soccer? Yeah, people in Gaza don't have legs, dude. They don't have water. You got something to say about that? Why not? You can shove that whole bleeding heart progressive act and shove it up your fucking ass. I see that from all of them, and it's always the same. Whether you're an evangelical Christian, whether you're a left-wing Jew, whether you're a Zionist Jew, that's the one thing they will not talk about. It's the one thing that every decent person in the world should be willing to stand up and say something about, whether you believe in God or not, whether you're a Christian or not, whether you're a Muslim or not. Every decent person in the world can see what's going on there. Anybody with a conscience, and especially Muslims because it's their people, and especially Christians because we have that global consciousness. Every decent person in the world, right-wing or left-wing, white or brown, Christian or Muslim, should be able to say that's evil. And yet it's always these usual suspects that are covering it up for it. Jews on the progressive left, which we see that all the time. Right-wing Zionists, right-wing evangelicals like Charlie Kirk. We need a realignment in the country. If it's not clear already, we need a realignment in the country. I no longer find myself aligned with the GOP. I no longer find myself aligned with a party that is controlled by Israel, that is controlled by Wall Street, that is controlled by Silicon Valley, that is cutting corporate taxes. Where is the Trump agenda that was promised in 2016? Where's the Trump agenda where we're going to do an infrastructure bill? Where's the Trump agenda where we're going to stop bringing in foreign labor to replace Americans? Where's the Trump agenda that said we're not going to fight Israel's wars and take Zionist money? Where's the Trump agenda that said we're not going to take super PAC money from billionaires? Where's the Trump agenda that said we're going to cut taxes for working people, not billionaires? Because I want that Trump agenda. I want the Trump agenda that said we're going to make education and healthcare and housing affordable for people, for Americans. But we seem to be getting just a redux, a rehash of the old GOP with like new money. The old GOP, but just with Silicon Valley this time. And I'm kind of sick of that. So I'm willing to listen to a Democrat, a Republican, who in 2028 will deliver on this agenda. Will it be someone like a Bernie Sanders? Will it be a progressive Democrat who is not anti-white? If someone like an Anna Kasparian ran for office under the Democrats, I might vote for her. if it was a guy. I don't know if I'd vote for a woman. But if somebody ran on the Democrat ticket that was not anti-white, that was against Israel's wars, that was against foreign labor, I could see myself voting for a candidate like a Jim Webb. I could see myself voting for someone like an Andrew Yang, for that matter. Not him per se, but someone like him. I would prefer to vote for a Republican. I prefer to vote for a young Republican that can deliver on what Trump promised. Can the Republican Party really not field one candidate like that? My ideal candidate would be a young guy on the Republican ticket that was in favor of net zero migration, border security, deportations, ending the foreign wars, being explicitly about restraining Israel, infrastructure, housing, healthcare, law and order. I would vote, if there was a young guy promising that, I would vote for that. I'd prefer to vote for that. Which party will field a candidate that will take the grievance of all of the people about this situation and put it on a party platform? Will it be Dan Bilzerian? Will it be Anna Kasparian? Who will it be? But I will not vote for another corporate Republican. I will not vote for another Israel First rhino. I'm not going to support this. I'm not going to go along with Charlie Kirk. I'm done with the talking points. I'm done with the Wall Street, Israel, Silicon Valley, Hasbara. I'm done with it. So anyway, so that's that. But I do want to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chat.
Before we look at the super chats, I can't help but have this thought in my mind where I just hope that Nick Fuentes is taking, do I want to say this? I hope that Nick Fuentes is protecting himself. That's what I hope for. Because like him or not, he's willing to say a lot of the things that we all know is true. But a lot of the politicians and a lot of our family members and friends have created an environment where we can't speak on these things because they've always been too scared to speak on them. And then it's created an environment of fear. So now when we call a lot of these things out, we're almost saying it where we're almost expecting, like looking over our shoulder, like somebody's going to hit us or something like that. We walk on eggshells when it comes to Israel, period. That's just the case. And I'm kind of BSing a little bit. What I was going to say is, if they try to assassinate Trump, I'm just going to leave it there. Nick Fuentes is an entirely different animal. The things that I thought that they were scared with Trump are some of the things that he just mentioned, as far as him not willing to get bullied by whatever country may want to finesse us into another war. I thought that he wasn't willing to get bullied by Bibi Netanyahu in Israel. I thought that Trump would deliver on a true America first agenda. When it comes to Nick Fuentes, I don't think he can run for president in the next election because he's too young, but that's even more of a reason to fear him. He is still young. How old? I don't even know how old you have to be when you run for president. Hold on one second. Let me look this up. How old do you have to be to run for president of the United States? So you have to be 35 years old. He is currently, how old is Nick Fuentes? 27 years old. So he's got to wait 2 more election cycles at least, depending on how it falls. Whether he's president or not, whether he's running for president or not, he is going to be one of the most influential people in American politics for a very long time. And he's shaking things up, and he's not going along with the establishment. And it's something that I think we all should salute and commend him for. But I also hope that he's just understanding, as I'm sure he does, the position that he's putting himself in. And we should celebrate it and appreciate it, because what it's going to do is it's going to force others. It's going to put pressure on others to speak truth as well, and to not be able to hide behind their insecurities like we see with like a Charlie Kirk who can be so outgoing and upfront and direct when it comes to other topics, but then just seems to tuck his tail when it comes to Israel, just being real.